In today's video, how long is too long to be in a caloric deficit? Hey guys, what's going on? This is Paul Rebella from ProPhysique.com, and today might just be the last video I ever do in this office. We're in the process of packing and moving to a new house. We've built a gym, so I don't know where I'm going to be doing my videos in the future. Could be at my new house, could be at the new gym, but we'll see from there. But yeah, it's kind of sad leaving this place. A lot's happened since I moved into this house 3 years ago, and I had less than 10,000 subscribers, and now thanks to you guys, I'm pushing that 200,000 mark, which is mind-blowing to me. So thank you guys for all the support over the last couple years and into the future, because I gotta tell you, we're just getting started. We're planning some really cool stuff in the near future as our transformation challenge, the first one ever for Pro Physique, ends. You know, when I moved into this office 3 years ago, it was just me and one other employee, maybe two, might have been two, Tyler and Steven. Now we're at 25 employees. That's right, Pro Physique is massive. We have 18 coaches. So it's been just an insane kind of journey, and I really appreciate you guys coming along for that. Today's question, it comes from my Instagram. So, you know, what's funny is when I moved here, my Instagram had a lot more followers than my YouTube. That's not the case anymore. So go over to my Instagram, make me feel better, give me a follow there. But if you want to send me a direct message, that's what I love to do. I love to answer your questions. And if you love this approach, this evidence-based approach to reaching your goals, and we're going to talk about how long is too long to be in a caloric deficit and what you should do once you get the weight off from your diet, hit subscribe. That's what I love to do here. So let me read the questions first, just to give you an idea where my head's at, and then I'm going to go over how I would approach this if I were doing this myself or if I were coaching a client through it. And as always, it's open to discussion. So the first one I want to post is just straight up, how long is too long in a caloric deficit, and when and how do I start reverse dieting? Great question. The other one was a little bit longer, but I thought they were so kind of interrelated, I thought, perfect, I'll do these together. Hey coach, was wanting your advice for about a year now. I've been in a caloric deficit of 1,700 calories. I lost roughly 25 pounds, congrats, and got down to 160. Once I hit my goal, I stayed in my deficit and didn't try to reverse because I feared putting on the weight. But since quarantine, I have put on some weight, up to 170. I feel like my metabolism has adapted to 1,700 calories. It's now my maintenance. My question is if I should take a diet break for a week and eat at a surplus of 2,100 calories and then go back into a 1,700 calorie deficit. Or do you think I should lower my caloric intake below 1,700? If possible, I would love to talk it over on the phone if possible. Please keep up the good work. Now listen, I would love to talk it over on the phone with you. I would love to talk to every single one of you. This is not a good week, my friend. And as always, there's a link on my profile on Instagram, and I'll put it below. If you fill out a questionnaire, we can set up a phone call to discuss your goals. Okay, so let's talk about this first. You said you were in a 1,700 calorie deficit for a long time. So what you should have said at the end there was that I was no longer in a deficit. 1,700 calories is correct. That was your maintenance. If all other things are equal, you can move more to create a deficit, but if your movement is the same, that is going to be correct. 1,700 calories is probably no longer a deficit for you. So what you mentioned was jumping your calories up by 400. That would probably have worked at the end of your deficit. But by maintaining 1,700 calories for so long, you're probably very adapted to that. And so having a 2,100 calorie diet for a week or so, I would expect you might actually gain some weight from that, right? Just depends on how active you are and how you respond. So what I would instead do is start at 1,700 calories. You're so good at that diet, I would start walking those calories up by 50 to 100 per week. So you might start at 1,800 calories for a week. Hold for there. After one full week, see how you feel. Scale is stable, go ahead, add another 50 or 100 calories based on how you feel. Now, typically I usually add carbs and fats first, but if you're really hungry and you find you can't satiate, sometimes adding protein will actually help because you get more volume, more satiety from protein. The real issue here is the length of time that you've been in this. You also didn't tell me what your goal was. Now, I assume based on everything that you're telling me that your goal is to lose fat. As a coach, the number one priority is working towards our goals of our clients. And so if your goal is to get leaner and you're on 1,700 calories and you're not losing weight, well, what would I say? I would say we have to find a way to create more of a deficit. That doesn't mean you have to eat less. People underestimate the value of moving more. That's right, simply walking. I talk about it all the time, but it's because it's so powerful, okay? I've lost 15 pounds in the last few months during this transformation challenge for myself. All I did was walk. That's it. Yeah, I tracked my diet, but I walked. You don't have to make cardio something scary or something annoying. Get up in the morning and go for a walk. I go for a walk with my wife every day. It's a great time for us to connect and have a conversation. You can use walking as a great means to an end. You can also do something fun. I love sports. Sometimes I'll get out there and play basketball. I'll run around in the backyard with my kids. Don't think of weight loss as just restricting calories. Personally, as a coach, someone who coaches performance athletes, physique athletes that get on stage, what I really try to do is find that balance for where they can perform. I would much rather not have to have low calories. I would much rather have higher calories, but moving much more. That tends to have a much better impact, especially when the goal is keeping and building muscle. You never, ever want to lose lean body mass, okay? And in fact, you can continue to put on lean body mass for a long time while in a deficit, okay? As long as you're training hard, your macronutrient profiles are good, and you don't have a ton of training history, building muscle is something that we should all be striving for, especially during weight loss. So really, the final question is, how long is too long to be in a caloric deficit? Now, I'll say this is inversely proportional to how much weight you have to lose. Let's say your body fat set point is 150 pounds and you're walking around at 250 pounds. How long is too long to be in a deficit? I would say that person can be in deficit for a lot longer, right? They have a lot of body fat stores that they can use up. However, if you're only 160 pounds, you shouldn't be in a deficit for too long, because then you're going to get below your set point. And what happens when you get below your set point? That's when we start to see some hormonal adaptations, some food disordered adaptations, meaning you start to covet food, you start to crave food, you can start to develop some eating disorder behaviors. Now, it doesn't mean you have an eating disorder, but even when I get close to stage weight, I start to notice I'm really picky about what I want to eat. I'm really picky about when I want to eat. And I can certainly, if I have something that I haven't had in a while, it can trigger a lot of hunger. These behaviors are pretty abnormal for me. At this body composition, I have no cravings. I have no hunger. Maybe a little bit because I'm losing weight right now. But the point is, you can be in a deficit longer until you get to that body fat set point. Now, I know the next natural question is, well, how do we know what our body fat set point is? And it just depends, how you grew up. I grew up kind of always on the thinner side, always running and playing sports. So when I graduated high school, I was only 155 pounds. I believe my set point is right around 220. That's my happy place. I can be 220 with no discomfort, okay? But I really didn't grow until after high school. I grew several inches and put on a lot of weight. So I think for most of us, it's when we reach adulthood, okay? So for girls, I think it's probably gonna be sometime in the high school years. For guys, for most of us, it's gonna be sometime after the high school years in our early 20s that we kind of meet adulthood, and that's kind of our set point. It's the body you're kind of given. Now, unless you abused yourself when you were young and you really overate and you were obese, that can really throw off hormones in the younger years, change things for long term. But if you've been a healthy person, there was probably a point in your life where you just felt like you could eat whatever you want. You kind of always look the same. That's, for me, what a set point is. Now, there is a huge variation in the set point, okay? So how long should you diet for? Well, a lot of this great research that's been coming out, and if you're not familiar with the Matador study, I'll link it below. Look up the Matador study and just read through it. They took two groups of people, okay? They took one group and they dieted them on a caloric deficit for 16 weeks straight, okay? Then they took another group and they dieted them for 16 weeks, but only 2 weeks at a time. Every 2 weeks in a deficit, they would end it, bring their calories up to their predicted maintenance, not the maintenance that they were at before, but their current maintenance. Then after 2 weeks at their current maintenance, they would diet again. They did this, but it took 30 weeks to get to 16 total weeks because of the 2 weeks break. Well, what happened? What do you guys think happened? Now, if I told you it was going to take you 30 weeks to reach your goal, you'd probably say, oh, that's too long, I don't want to get there. But what if I told you you only had to diet for 2 weeks at a time? Mentally, I think a lot of us can do anything for 2 weeks at a time. Well, the group that dieted for 16 weeks, they lost a lot of weight. But the group that dieted for 30 weeks lost more weight, kept more lean body mass, had a better metabolism, and most importantly, they kept more weight off. Even when they did follow-ups months after, they kept more weight off. A successful diet is not one where you can just lose a bunch of weight and then eventually you put it all back on. It's one where you get to maintain it. So instead of focusing on how long you can be in a caloric deficit, what I like to focus on with my clients is when I notice we're reaching a point where fatigue is constant, stress is high, hunger is present, and they're just feeling run down, instead of waiting for them to break and crash, I'll say it's time for a diet break. Now typically for my clients, because we're focusing on the stage, diet breaks are only going to be a 7-day diet break. Sometimes we can actually stretch it out to 2 weeks depending on how far off the shelf we are. And here's the beautiful thing. Most of the time, my clients actually lose weight during a diet break. And I know what you're saying, Paul. How are they losing weight at maintenance? Well, because calories in, calories out is so dynamic, when you actually bring calories up to maintenance, things like non-exercise activity improve, sleep improves, performance improves. So you might actually end up burning a few more calories just because you feel so good. But whatever the reason, the goal is to maintain, and often we do that, almost always, and even sometimes drop weight during those diet breaks. So it's not as if you have to just give up your goals during those 2 weeks, but it is important that you keep the same habits. A diet break, the way I describe them, is not a break from dieting. In fact, it's almost more difficult because your goals are still the same, but you're not focusing on losing weight for those 2 weeks. You're focusing on maintaining before the next push to drop. So I'll typically have my clients for 4 to 6, sometimes 8 weeks straight in a deficit before we'll do a diet break. I also love including refeed days, okay? I've done tons of videos on this, but if you have a 7-day diet, my most popular method is 5 low days, 2 consecutive refeed days, and this really gives us a nice reprieve. Now I'll typically do this once we kind of get in a place where weight loss is stalled, we've been dieting for a while. I don't usually start out with refeeds, but again, if you think of this as non-linear, meaning you're not just always dieting, you're gonna have a lot more success. The crash diets that promise you crazy results in a short amount of time, those are also the diets that if you don't take care of yourself after, are going to put you in a worse place than where you started. So I don't think that there's a right answer for how long you could be in a deficit. I think the more body fat you have to lose, the longer you can be in a deficit. But as always, if you pay attention, use refeeds and diet break strategies, you can extend a successful diet and develop habits to keep the weight off long term. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for me today. Might be the last one from here. Might do one tomorrow because the move is actually Saturday. We'll see.